What's up, guys? Baker here. Today I'm back with a very exciting tutorial. This is basically the announcement of my Baker Easy Transition V2 preset plugin for After Effects, and it is just the ultimate all-in-one transition preset, everything you need into one little package, and I'm here to show you how it works. So this tutorial, I'm going to go over a couple of the new cool features that I implemented into this sweet little plugin, and then I'm going to show you how to install it because it is a little bit different than your normal average preset. I'm going to show you how to use it, and if you used my version 1 preset, then this section should be no problem for you. And then I'm going to show you a couple of examples, some of the new styles of transitions. So first, let's go ahead and start with some of the new features. So listed here is a quick rundown of all the features in this new version 2. Basically, like I said before, this is the ultimate all-in-one After Effects transition preset. Everything you need. There's easy navigation with a custom-built interface. Now before, I had a bunch of slider controls and it was kind of hard to manage, but now I have a custom-built preset and it is way easier to use this time. Just like last time, you will have full control with a transition curve editor, but this time I've added a new warp curve editor. A couple extra keyframes, but allows for more customization and cooler effects. You will still be able to use the basic zoom, rotation, and slide transitions. And now I've added these cool warps. I've named them pinch warp, turbulent warp, perspective warp, bulge warp, swirl warp, and wiggle warp. And you will see some examples of what those look like in a little bit. There are 4 different blur styles included. They are zoom, rotate, and slide blurs. And the 4th one is a custom blur that will react to whatever your transition is. Because if you have some fancy stuff going on with a bunch of combinations, this one will automatically blur to exactly what that will look like. So with all these options, you can basically do at least 250 million different transitions within a few clicks. Realistically, there would be infinite amount of different transitions with different strengths and whatnot. What I really like about this new plugin is this will work in any After Effects language. One of the issues before was your After Effects would have to be in English, or you'd have to translate some of the effects and expressions to your version of After Effects, whether it be Spanish or French or German or whatever. But this one, I've tested it, this works in any language, so props to that. No third-party plugins are needed, so anyone can use this with the basic installation of After Effects. And this will be compatible with After Effects CS6 and newer. So let's jump into installation. When you download my Baker Easy Transition V2 file, it'll come with my transition preset, and you'll also see that I've included a sound pack and a color correction pack for free. I also have a quick text file that you can use if you have any questions or need some extra instructions. So let's go into the transition preset folder, and you'll see you'll have your Baker Easy Transition V2.ffx. That is a After Effects transition preset. And if you've ever used After Effects before, you probably know where to install this, but in case you don't, what you're going to do is copy this file and go over here to your Documents folder, Adobe, your version of After Effects, User Presets. You can place this anywhere inside your User Presets folder, but I typically like to create a new folder. I'm going to call this Baker Transition. Go inside here and just paste. There you go. It's installed. Now let me show you one little thing. When you jump into After Effects and you use it for the first time, let's say we make an adjustment layer and we search up Baker Easy Transition, it's not going to show up. So first, you need to either restart After Effects or click this little button and refresh your list. Once it's refreshed, you should see your new version 2 installed. Now, when you apply this for the first time, you should get an error message if you are using CS6. And this is because this is a custom-built preset that is not recognized by After Effects. If you're using After Effects CC, this will be no issue. And to be honest, it should be no issue with CS6 as well. Even though it's missing, everything about this preset will still work. You can go into your settings and change whatever you want. Everything will work just fine. But if for some reason this missing tag on the title kind of bugs you and you want to get rid of that error message, here's exactly how you're going to fix that. And again, this is only for CS6 users. Go back to your folder where you downloaded my preset. You should see a file called Preset Effects XML. If we open this with a text editor, you will see a bunch of code which basically describes every single thing about my preset and how it was made. Now we need to take this and basically install it into After Effects. So we'll go to our Finder and we'll open up Applications and then our version of After Effects. And for PC users, this will be your program files. We're going to open up Package Contents, open up After Effects, go into Contents, go all the way down to Resources. And for PC users, this will be called Support Files. And you're going to find a file called Preset Effects XML. And let's go ahead and open that with a text editor. So this one will include all the preset effects that After Effects recognizes. And there's a huge list. What we need to do is first close this, go back to our folder, take your Preset Effects XML, copy and paste it. Now take this copy, rename this to Backup, just in case you want to get rid of any changes we're about to do and something goes wrong and you have a backup. So it's always good to have this. So now we're going to open up our preset effects one more time. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and we should have Effect and Effects on the last two lines. All we need to do is hit return a couple times. Let's unlock this first. Hit return a couple times so we have some space in between Effect and Effects. Go into My Preset Effects code, highlight everything, copy it. Go back to this code and paste it in between Effect and Effects. Paste, file save, and you're done. Let's close this. Let's close this. So now the Preset Effects file has our code inside of it, and when we restart After Effects, so let's go ahead and restart. So now if we apply our preset to our adjustment layer by searching Baker Easy Transition V2, click and drag, you'll have no missing error and everything works just fine. Like I said before, it'll work fine either way, but if you're tired of that missing effect for CSX users, go ahead and just copy my code into the Preset Effects XML code. So now, how do we use this? If you're a first-time user, this will be for you. If you're an advanced user and you've used my version 1 plugin, this should be a piece of cake. So first, once we apply the preset, if we push U, you will see it'll apply keyframes exactly where a timeline indicator starts. So if your timeline indicator is somewhere near the edge, or if your composition is too short, your keyframes might be outside of the composition. So you'll have to either reapply it closer to the left or extend the length of your composition. So if you notice carefully, we have 4 keyframes for the transition curve and 3 keyframes for the warp curve. What you want to do is go find the first frame of your second clip and take these keyframes, line up the third keyframe of the transition curve to that spot, which is also the second keyframe of the warp curve. So now we can take all of these effects and collapse them to clean them up a little bit, and we can open up our Baker Easy Transition V2 and take a look. The first thing you will see will be the center point. Now this will default to the center of a 1080p composition, so if you have a 720p composition, you would just need to change this to 640 by 360. If you have any other composition, you can just change the center point to whatever you want, or the exact center of your composition. If you open up your curve settings, this will just be the holder for your keyframes, and we don't need to have that open at any time. Transition settings. This is where your basic strengths of your transition will occur. So if we just type in, let's say 100% for zoom strength, we will see that we have our clip, and it'll zoom in right to the next clip. Piece of cake. Now using this is as simple as just changing any of these values. Changing rotation to 90, and this will spin just like that. So you have slide, and we can go into warp settings and pinch warp and turbulent warp and perspective warp and bulge warp and swirl warp and wiggle warp and the blur settings, and everything you have in this interface will be exactly what you need. So the coolest part about this transition preset is this isn't actually a preset of a transition. It's more of a, I like to call it a plugin, because you can modify and change anything you want instantly. It's basically like a machine. It really makes it handy for creating the type of transition that you want without having to worry about finding a bunch of separate presets and it's not exactly what you want, and this allows full control and customization within seconds. So let's go over a couple more examples. Let's say I set my zoom strength to 100%. You will see we have our clip 1 zooming into our second clip here. If we go to pinch warp, we can increase the strength to, let's say, 300. Now you will see no difference because the pinch warp by default is turned off. So if we slide down here, we can turn our pinch warp 1 and 2 on. Now to make this transition run smoothly and quickly, make sure you only turn on the options that you want to show. That's why most of these are defaulted to be turned off. So if we take a look at our pinch warp, we will see we get a nice little pinch and coming in like this. Now we do have some black areas showing up here, so we just need to go into motion tile and increase our output height. Let's say 300. And let's take a quick RAM preview. Pretty neat. And all this is customizable to any strength that you want. And it even works if you went negative 100 on your zoom strength. Pretty cool and warpy. I like it. Let's turn our pinch warp back down to 0, and let's turn off our pinch warp down here. Our next example would be the turbulent warp. So let's turn that strength up to maybe 100, let's say, and turn our turbulent warp on. Now it is pretty crazy, so let's go ahead and change the size up a bit so it's a little smoother, maybe 300. We'll get rid of the zoom, and we'll do a little slide, and we'll see how that looks. Kind of cool, wiggly, turbulent warp looking thing. Let's go ahead and reset that. Turn this off. Perspective warp. Now this perspective, I think, works best for slided transitions, but you can use it for anything else. So let's say I had a slide of, let's say, 1500 in the X direction. So this just slides over like that. If we turn up our strength, let's say to 150, turn on perspective warp, you should see a slight tilt on the left side of the screen. And it is pretty subtle here because the strength isn't very high. But if you see this, so let me zoom out here. If you look at this perspective warp, it's taking the edges and pinching them outwards to make a cool tilting effect. Now, in addition to tilting, you can also have skew, which takes the corners, and if you look over here, it makes them both go down. Now this works best by thinking it like this. If I'm sliding, I want the, let's say the bottom side, I want the bottom side to be like a hinge. And you will see that this kind of skews to the side, like it's kind of like a lazy transition, like it has some inertia to it and it's sliding over like this. Let's take a quick RAM preview. Pretty neat. It's kind of like it's, you know, stuck to the bottom. And you can do that for, let's say, the top, and you'll get the same effect, like the top is being hinged and the bottom is slowly speeding up to catch up. Now there's also stretch mode, which basically stretches the clip and makes it seem like it has inertia coming in from the side. And now the way you want to pick the direction is think of which way is the camera moving. And this looks like the camera's moving to the right, so we have the right side selected. Let's see what that looks like. Nice little snappy warp transition, kind of stretching and coming in like it's a piece of rubber or something. Pretty cool. Let's go and turn off perspective warp. Let's dive into bulge warp. So we can turn up the strength to, let's say, 100 for now, and turn on bulge warp. And I think this looks best with a slide transition. So let's go ahead and just say Y slide, I don't know, negative 2000. Slide it up like this. And you'll see we kind of get a fisheye looking effect, which I think is pretty cool. So we have two options. We have fisheye and we have rolling. My favorite, to be honest, is rolling, because look at this. What we can do is change the strength, something like this, make it kind of extreme if you want. You can play with the radius, and take a look at this. It's like it's rolling inside of a cylinder or something like that. I think that's pretty neat. Now, at any time you want to add some blurs, a little side note, all you need to do is go into your blur settings. Let's say, in this case, I'm sliding. I'm going to turn my blur strength to 100 and just go ahead and turn on your slide blur. This might make your transition look a lot smoother and better. Let's take a quick look at that real quick. That was pretty neat. Look how that rolls. Very nice. Alright, let's turn those off. Let's check out the swirl warp. And if I just turn my strength up to, let's say, 100 and turn that on. And instead of sliding, let's do a rotation of, I don't know, maybe 90. Let's take a look at that. You kind of get a swirl looking effect. And you can change your radius in case you want a smaller, tighter swirl or a larger, softer swirl. So let's go ahead and take a quick RAM preview of what this looks like. Pretty neat. Nice looking swirl. And this works for both directions. I set it up so that no matter what direction you use, it'll always swirl in the correct direction. So -90 will swirl this way. Very neat. Let's reset everything one more time, and the last warp here is a wiggle warp. And the position wiggle, let's say 50 pixels, and rotation maybe 3 degrees. And let's just use a zoom of, I don't know, maybe 50. What this will do, it'll wiggle your image right where the transition happens, and it'll kind of shake and then slow down and ease up. I think it's pretty nice, and it gives you full control of your strength of the position and the speed, as well as the rotation, strength, and speed. So another note about the blur settings, usually you want to use the basic zoom, rotation, or slide blurs because they are a lot faster. But if you have a lot of customization and a lot of crazy things going on, one thing you could use is this overall blur strength, which references this force motion blur down here, which will blur any motion that you have exactly how it should be moving. Let's do one last example. This is one of my favorite combinations. Let's set our zoom to, let's say, 100 and our rotation to maybe 180. And let's turn our pinch up to like a 300. And let's turn these on real quick. I know I'm going to be using pinch warp, so I'll turn that on. Let's also turn on swirl. Let's go back up here. So pinch, I'm going to say 300, maybe 400, make it real extreme. The swirl we can turn down maybe 50, not so crazy. And I like my position and rotation wiggle just how they're at. So this transition will include a zoom, a rotation, a pinch warp, a swirl warp, and a wiggle warp. Let's check this out. Pretty neat. I think it's cool. Now, if you want to adjust these transitions at any time, push U and check out these keyframes. So the transition curve will determine where and how fast your transition is going to happen. So if you want it real quick, we can squeeze these keyframes in nice and tight like this. And let's check out and see what that looks like. So that was a lot faster, and you'll see that the warps last a lot longer than the transition, and that's because these warp curve keyframes are way out here. So if you want, you can move these in and place them however you want. Another thing you can do is go into your transition curve and open up the graph editor and take a look at these keyframes. Now, quick tip, if you are going to move these keyframes left and right, do not use the graph editor because this can move them up and down on accident, and you don't want to be doing that. If you ever want to change the value or position of the keyframe, make sure you do it in this view here. But in the graph editor, you want to be using this for the handles to adjust, how it looks. So we can, instead of making this smooth, we can make this sharp like this, make this one sharp, and you'll get a totally different style of a transition. It won't be smooth at all, but it will be, something different. So it's kind of weird, but it's something you could do. So another option is to have it fast in the beginning and maybe scoot these back out and make it kind of slow, smooth out. And if we go to the transition curve, graph editor, open this up, you see our curve is totally messed up now. So you need to adjust these handles whenever you move your keyframes. So one thing I want to try to do is maybe have it go down, so back negative like that. See how that looks. And let's make this smooth again. Same thing for the warp curve. Now this warp curve goes from 0, 1 to 0. So let's see if I can take this last keyframe, maybe make it negative just a little bit and see how that looks. Now this should, in theory, make this almost look like a bounce at the very end. Let's take a look. So it's not the best because I just played with the handles real quick, but you can see that changing how the transition curve looks will change how the transition actually looks. So anyways, guys, I think that's about everything I wanted to talk about. If I forgot to say something, I'll probably add it to the description of the video or in the comments. I hope you guys enjoy and experiment with this new version 2 transition plugin. I think it's pretty neat. I worked really hard on this. If you open up all the expressions by pushing U. You can see I added a lot more expressions. It's way more complex than before. Going through the XML file and trying to set up exactly how this transition should be presented. Now, just as a thank you, you will notice that I also included a sound pack for all these, vlog videos and short films and everything. And you'll see I have some city sounds, some ambient sounds and cars and transportation kind of sounds. In nature, I have a lot of, forest sounds and water and just a bunch of cool nature sound effects and whatnot. And then finally, miscellaneous, just some extra cool stuff, some whooshes and other sound design elements. So that'll be pretty cool. I also included a color correction pack for free as well. And these are FFX files, and you need to install these in your user presets just like before. And these color corrections kind of look like this. You can read my short help text file for any other information on the sound pack or grading pack or my transition plugin. So without further ado, please like and favorite the video. Comment if you have any questions. Feel free to hit me up on Facebook or Twitter if you have any questions about this plugin. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys experiment with this and make some pretty awesome videos. Alright, that is it. Peace.